So that's the whole thing with Marley. They were oppressed by the Eldians, and now that the Eldians is gone and they just left this group behind, we're gonna oppress these Eldians because we got to get our lick back. And the show is trying to show you something, is trying to tell you something, but I feel like a lot of people don't catch it. Like, I feel like a lot of people don't catch it. Like, they're just like, nope, screw Marley because the attack, the Colossal Titan and and all that stuff. They're not catching it because you're not following the story. No one's explaining to you the story by how the timeline is actually working. You see the story told in one way when you watch it. But then when you dig into it and you look at the timeline and how actually things happen, it paints a completely different picture. Now, it's not to say that anyone's right or wrong. That's the whole thing in the show. Nobody's right or wrong in anything. But it's a cycle of violence and oppression and imperialism and colonialism that is continuing all of everybody's suffering. So they experiment on the people with Amir's blood for centuries, and they use them as their warhammers. They do exactly what the Eldians did. They take these people, they enslave them, and then they use them to fight in their wars. My hair is already starting to dry. And they do this, and they also do propaganda to convince these people that you should be suffering and you should be dying for us. You should be giving us your children to use in our experiments because of how awful Eldia was. And there is a group of people within that group. They also live in internment camps, by the way. They're segregated. They isolated. They live in internment camps. They can't go anywhere without being tagged or even killed for wandering outside of their camp without like basically like a hall pass or something, without permits. And so there's a group of people within this group who believe that what they're being told is propaganda and that the Eldians were actually great people. Also, too, Marley does teach him, like, hey, the Eldians went to paradise and they left you behind. They're over there getting fat, living their best lives, and you're over here being enslaved because they didn't care about you. So you should want to help us build up our science so that we can kill all of them. And so some people very much internalize that, like Aaron's grandparents and Reiner's parents. But there is a small group within this group who believes like, no, actually the Eldians were great and Marley's lying to us and it's propaganda, that the Eldians actually like helped build civilization and we are part of a great people, a proud people. We have royal blood, we have special blood. You know, we was kings and queens and then they turned us into slaves. So they have these conversations, they have these and they form their own religious ideology around what it actually means to be an Eldian and to have an Eldian bloodline. It does not mean that you are dirty or impure, as the Marleyans would want them to believe. They believe that it actually makes them special. The fact that they can turn into these titans is not that they're monsters, it's that they are special. And that it's a beautiful thing to be celebrated, and they should be proud of their heritage and they should be proud of their culture. Obviously, this puts a target on their back. Government doesn't like it when oppressed people start organizing behind their back. So the government goes after the religious sect, which tries to, have their own thing where they worship Amir as a goddess, as a, all of that. And then they also go after the political version of this, which is where Aaron's father, Grisha, and his wife at the time, Dina, come in, because they are a part of this group that is trying to overthrow the Marleyan government and restore Eldia to its rightful glory. So Grisha's parents, Aaron's grandparents, are very much, believing the propaganda of like, hey, they left us, so screw them. They left us behind. And so they very much believe all the propaganda, and they very much raise their son and his sister to believe the propaganda too. But then when Grisha's sister and his sister try to like sneak out of the internment camps and go somewhere and have fun, they're caught by the police, and the police literally kill his sister, his younger sister, by letting their dogs eat her, which is wild, a wild thing for them to do. Like, she's young enough that she could be eaten by dogs. It's crazy. And this like radicalizes him, and this is why he ends up joining the political group. that political faction. This is where he meets Dina Fritz, who has royal blood. Everybody with royal blood, almost everybody in the show with royal blood has blonde hair too. I thought that was an interesting stylistic choice. They end up having a child. They try to raise their child with their beliefs, similar to how Grisha's parents raised him, but he ends up turning against them because he's like, man, I'm a kid. I want a dad. Why you over here trying to get me involved in all this Black Panther shit? Like, I just wanted to be a kid, and I'm not getting any love from you because you busy doing all that. So he ends up turning on them, and they end up, as the punishment for many Eldians who step out of line, getting turned into pure Titans who are then sent after the Paradis Island to, I don't know what they think is actually happening, but I think there's the underlying understanding that they are doing this to terrorize the Eldians on the island. Like, that's kind of like an underlying thing, because I don't think that they really think that people are going there as pure Titans and then they're magically being turned into humans again, and they just live great lives on the Eldian island. Like, that doesn't make any sense. I really think that the Marleyan government has an understanding of what it is that they are doing when they are turning these people into Titans. They have an understanding that by turning them into Titans, they are, basically sentencing them to live for an eternity as this bumbling monster that can't really control what it does or when it does. Because Ymir, not the founder Ymir, but the character in the show Ymir, has said, like, for 60 years, she felt like she was living in hell. And so there's an understanding from the Marleyan government that they are condemning these people when they send them to paradise or paradis, not just like sending them back to their people. And I think other people have that understanding as well. But when it's time for Dina to be turned into a Titan, her husband Grisha tries to tell them that she's royal blood so that she can save her, but she won't let him do that, because if they know that she's royal blood, it just means that she's going to be used for more experiments and enslaved. So she would rather become a pure Titan than to be enslaved, to be further enslaved and experimented on. So they have this sweet little thing where she's like, I'll find you, I'm gonna remember who you are, and I'm gonna find you and all this stuff. And then she gets turned into a Titan, and she goes after one of the guys who jumped off the thing and like ran off. So then they're all like, oh, a person. And then Grisha, right before he turns, it's revealed that their secret government op, whose name is Aaron, but they called him Owl before they didn't know who he was, Aaron Kruger, is actually in the police, within the government. He's been their spy within the government. He makes himself known because he wants to help them, and he's reaching the end of his 13th year, so he knows that he's about to die, and he won't be able to hide the fact that he has the Attack Titan. And so he saves Grisha, turns him into a Titan, tells him to go to the wall, start a family. He's like, you're going to turn to a shifter, so you're going to be able to shift back, go to the wall, start a family, protect Eren and Mikasa. So he says that because the attack Titan has the ability to resist the influence of the founder, and they have the ability to receive the memories of future Attack Titan wielders. And so because of that, he kind of sort of knows who he kind of knows who Armin and Mikasa is, but he doesn't fully know who it is. He just knows that he has to tell Grisha to protect them, because if he does this, when Eren inherits the Titan from Grisha, he's gonna also have that memory of, we need to make sure that we're protecting Armin and Mikasa. So he goes to the wall. Grisha goes to the wall, and he's found outside because they're doing, people going around outside. They're doing their expeditions and stuff. Brought inside, he becomes a doctor. He falls in love with Carla Yeager and gives birth to Eren. So that's kind of how we get to that point in the show. And I think that it's important to understand how all of that works chronologically, because of the fact that the way that information is delivered to us throughout the show, it's done in a way where we get like breadcrumbs, right? Pieces here and there. But Grisha, from the beginning of the show, it puts a lot of his stuff in context to know his backstory, because the way he responds to things and the way he behaves is interesting, because he knows, unlike anybody else in the show. There's a whole thing in the show too where people are like, people withhold information until it becomes like pertinent or necessary for them to then share this information. And it's done so because the plot needs it. Like if Grisha was to say when he was first found outside the wall, "Hey, I can turn into a Titan." And Titans are actually humans and all of that. Because he knows when he is brought inside Paradis and he's like learning about everything. And people think that he's from inside the wall because they don't fathom that there's a human outside the wall. He realizes what's really good. But instead of telling anybody, he tries to find, the royal family to convince them to like help people and all of that stuff and like to, do the rumbling or like to save the Eldians who are outside the wall. He has his own agenda. So he chooses not to say nothing to nobody, not even his own wife, who he marries and has a child with. He don't say, "Hey, I was married before. Hey, I have a son." I have a son out there somewhere doing whatever. He doesn't tell his wife about any of this. He doesn't tell his wife I could turn to a Titan. He doesn't tell his wife that there's a royal family that can control things, that there is humanity outside the walls. People kind of sort of have like, like Armin had a little hidden book that he had found and stuff like that, but he doesn't tell anybody. He holds all of that to his chest. He knows they're sending people out in these scout regiments with the intention of trying to learn about the outside world, and they're dying in droves, and they're like crying and screaming like this isn't even worth it. We should just seal up the wall and all of that stuff. And he knows all of that. And he doesn't say anything. He knows that the pure Titans and the Titan shifters from Marley, who are going to attack at any minute, can only attack through the doors in the wall and not through the actual wall, because the wall is made up of colossal Titans. He knows all of this stuff and he doesn't say it. Why does he not say it? Because Eren is controlling him from the future. Like Eren's future self is using the Attack Titan to tell him what he needs to do and when he needs to do it. So he's trying to follow a specific path that's been laid out for him, and he doesn't deviate from it, because Eren has chosen to show him pieces of the future where he thinks that it might be better if he follows Eren's plan versus blowing the whole spot wide open and saying, "Here's the smoking gun, guys." Because he could tell everybody everything, but instead he chooses to just write in his little journals in the basement, lock it up with lock and key, and then follow the specific set path and plan that Eren has told him in his Attack Titan memories that he needs to follow in order to, save the world, basically. Because you don't fully know exactly what Eren is telling him he needs to do outside of a few clips about like how he told him to kill the royal family. But he does feel conflicted about the fact that he is following this plan and he doesn't fully know the full plan, and he doesn't know how it's all going to come about. He doesn't know how it's going to end. He just knows what Eren is choosing to show him. So that also is really a helpful thing to understand too, because again, there's a question like, by the time you find out what's in the basement and you read all this stuff, you're like, why this nigga just didn't tell people? Like, why didn't he just tell people? Why didn't he tell people what was going on? Why didn't he say I'm from outside the wall? And like that would have shook the entire island for him to reveal all of this information, but he didn't.